Howdy, howdy, folks, and welcome to Moose Podcast number 404, The Gear Conversation. How you folks doing? Here we are. Can you believe it? July 1st already. Holy cow, half the year has literally flown by as far as I'm concerned. I just back from a week in Arizona. And honest and truly, I wasn't the only one. It seemed like we had just walked in the cabin door and we're walking back out to head to the airport. Great shooting, had a really great shooting down there, but wow, time is flying. Hey, I want to thank you guys and your kind notes this past week. You guys were pretty darn active. You had a lot of questions, and I understand that. Lots going on in the old photography world, and we're going to touch upon some of that during this podcast. I appreciate you reaching out and asking what you do and how you do it. I really do appreciate your support. One of the questions came up that was pretty common, had to do with the new Nikon Z6 III. I regret I still haven't got my hands on one. Many of you have it already. It's already shipping, and some very specific Z6 III questions have come to my desk. I regret I don't have all those answers yet because I don't have that body, which brings up another question: am I going to get it? And that's part of the podcast today, the gear conversation. Excuse me, gear conversation. At this moment in time, uh, not planning on getting the Z6 III. The Z9 and Z8 does a pretty nice job for us. I've already talked with my other cohorts in crime, and that 240p native slow motion is really tempting. But at this moment, don't have a project that needs it. But yeah, it's a hot rod little camera. My goodness, is it gorgeous! So appreciate the comments, and when I have something that's really worth sharing, I'll do it. But you can learn from yourself what's about that camera, and I highly recommend, as you know, that you rent before you buy. And Bedford's camera, bedfords.com, has got the touch and try events coming up next week and the week after at their stores with the Z6 III. That's right. You can go to the store, put the Z6 III in your hand, touch it, and try it before you buy it. Now it would be, I'm not going to let you take it home for a week and shoot with it. You got the opportunities there at the store with the shooting galleries they have for you to do all that. But boy, that's just another way how Bedford's is out there helping you get the best gear for you, which is really essential, at the best price with the best service. And of course, remember, after you check out, you're going to get that Moose discount. So bedfords.com, whether you go in person, you give them a call, you go on the web, remember to say my name, and you will see some actual coin stay in your pocket. So thank you, bedfords.com, for sponsoring the Moose Podcast. Well, getting into this week's conversation, the gear conversation. I was at a couple of events in the last couple of weeks that were not photography based, or wasn't it wasn't what was going on. I was there with my cameras, but then, as one person noted, I always have a camera. He said, "I never remember seeing you walk around without a camera," which is pretty correct. I always have a camera on me. But no, these events, there's lots of cameras though they were just there to have fun with them, and that's where it dawned on me once again, because two people were right next to me, talking about, and they hadn't met each other before, and they struck up the conversation because they both saw each other had a more than just an iPhone camera. And in front of us was a one of a kind. And I'm not giving specific details because I don't want to offend anybody, but there was a one of a kind in front of us. And rather than discuss, and I've seen this so many times, the uniqueness of this one of a kind, right in front of us that you just, personally, this was the first time in my lifetime that I actually had seen this right in front of us, had seen it, period. And were they talking about that? No, they were having that gear conversation. Oh, isn't that cool? I see you've got the blah, blah, blah. Is that going to work good for this? Oh, I don't know. I see you've got the blah, blah, blah lens. What do you think of that? And rather than, at least in my humble opinion, discussing the uniqueness of this historic piece in front of them, or talking about some of the really cool things to take advantage of and some of the really icky things to avoid, there they go down the gear conversation. And as if, and this is what gets me, as if the gear is going to make or break this really cool thing that's in front of them transpiring. And it just, more times than not, I go to someplace, national park, wildlife refuge, the national seashore, the top of a mountain. I've been to so many places, and photographers, rather than focusing in on photography, start up a gear conversation. And I've always wondered, what is it? Because last time I went out shooting, I didn't see some guy pushing some cart down the road that, in case you didn't buy or have with you the right body or lens or filter tripod, they could sell you out of their rolling cart what you need, and then go down to the next group, take care of their equipment needs. No, when you show up to a location, you have what you've got, and that's it. So why not? Is there not a conversation about the light? Why is there not a conversation about telling that visual story? Why is there not a conversation about visual storytelling? Why do photographers always, and I should say always because it sounds like it's every time, even though I think it is every time, and it seems like every time, why is they turn to the gear conversation instead? Well, it dawned on me this last time. Is because they are very uncomfortable, if not totally insecure, when they get to something that should be photographed and they think that they don't have, or they're not sure of, or not confident they've got the right gear to get that moment. And the person next to them, they think, does. So then there's this whole, oh no, I have screwed up kind of thing. And then it's just that, as photographers, a couple things needs to transpire when you're out there shooting. One is, have confidence in yourself and your gear. Whatever it is that you're photographing, wherever it is, who's ever around you, stick to your guns. Because let's be honest, there is nothing you can do about it. You've grabbed what you think is going to be the right thing, so then make that work. And here's the biggie. Here's the kicker. Here's the thing I think a lot of photographers just have a problem doing. If it doesn't, don't put the camera to your eye. If let's say, for example, you go out to photograph some rare bird sighting, and for whatever reason you think it's going to be a slam dunk easy, you know, 400 millimeter lens shot, and it turns out that it needs to be a 2000 millimeter lens because it's so far out there, and all you can do is have a micro dot. If you don't think you can get the shot, then just don't take it. And that's the part that I think gets most photographers. It's the thought that after all you've gone through, you're going to come back without any pictures, no pictures That seems to be part of the nervousness that happens with the gear conversation. Now, you might be wondering why you're listening to a podcast about this, but there's been for a long time. This thing is what makes the photograph, the photographer or the gear? What comes first, the photographer or the gear? What's more important, the photographer or the gear? And you got to understand that that gear that's in your camera bag right this moment, it doesn't come out of that bag. It doesn't see the light of day without the photographer. And at the same time, that photographer doesn't have anything to share if he doesn't have that gear plastered to his eye. So it's not which one is more important, it's which one is driving the show and makes the decision. Obviously, it's you, the photographer. And in this very, rather than having a conversation about the gear have a conversation with the person next to you, and I'm almost going to dare you about making the photograph. I very rarely hear someone say, "Hey, what f-stop you think you're using? Hey, where are you going to put the subject in the frame? Hey, are you going to underexpose or overexpose to tell that story and bring out the emotion? Hey, do you think we should move 5 feet further, closer to it? Hey, should we move back? Should we move to the side?" It comes up with, oh, what lens is that? The conversation that you have with yourself or nervously with that photographer next to you, that conversation should be, how am I going to tell that story? How is that something that was historically unique that I had never seen before? How can I bring that back to you who wasn't there and understand that it is historic, it is amazingly unique? What problems visually do we need to solve to tell that story? It's rare. I hear it in my our workshop, our adventures, when each other talks to photographers talk to each other about, wow, we've got this major obstacle. What can we do to remove that? So visually, it's not in the story blocking our viewers' attention. Those conversations will get you so much further down the road photographically than the gear conversation. Now, that gear conversation, I hear it happen a lot also in non-shooting events, photographic conferences, um, gathering of photographers where photography isn't happening. They're either going to be watching some presentation or something. And the gear conversation comes up those times as well. Now, that's all very cool. And conversation is always a good thing. But it's interesting that, it's usually a one-upsmanship kind of conversation rather than trying to figure out how that tool you're talking about might help your visual storytelling. I would love to see, I've never seen it, I've thought about it, even thought about putting one on once, trying to make an event possible where photographers just come and they can just try lenses and asking and talking to somebody who just knows everything about that particular lens and see if they can get the story told that way. Back in the day when we did our digital landscape workshop series, which has been a decade, no, more than a decade since we had the last one, I was fortunate that I had a lot from Nikon support and sponsorship of the event, a lot of Nikon glass that photographers could try during that week of landscape shooting. And the conversations I had with some photographers was absolutely amazing. The gear conversation, they would, for example, I had lots of at the time 10 and 16 full frame fisheye lenses. The 10 is for the FX and the 16 was for the full frame DSLR cameras. And I mean, those lenses, when you go out to landscape and you put the horizon dead center through the frame, the only curvature effect you see is mostly at the edge of the frame, any perpendicular lines to the horizon. And talking to a photographer about using that as a tool um, was one conversation. And then I'd always say, "Oh, well, I'll tell you what, did you try this?" And they said, "Well, no." And I said, "Well, you keep it for a little bit longer and try it out." And the thing I would talk to them about doing is taking a person's portrait. Now, have you ever taken a portrait with a full frame fisheye? Talk about having a gear conversation. It can it's not something that you might think of as being just absolutely uh, ridiculous, but it is in a way kind of cartoonish in the way it kind of reimagines some elements of a person's face depending on where you're standing, how you point it. But it's just fun, and that's what photography and gear should be about. Is that fun? So the gear conversation. The point of the podcast is, yeah, you should talk to folks about the gear, but when you have that moment in front of you and you've already made the decision what you've got, have the confidence in your decision and to make things happen, and not fear that factor that you might have picked the wrong piece of gear, or have confidence that you did pick the right piece of gear, and make those things happen photographically for you. Now, the gear conversation. The last thing I'm bringing up is at this event. There's a person there who it wasn't a photographer, not even a photographer, enjoys photography, sees a lot of photography, um, and I'm standing there with my camera on my side, and these folks who were having the gear conversation all of a sudden pick up their camera and start going crazy. And I'm like, I'm looking and looking, I'm not seeing anything. And this other person, this observer came up, who's not a photographer, and says, "So, they're shooting and you're not. They were talking about camera gear, and you apparently were just smiling, looking at the event." They said, "What are you missing, or what did they miss?" And I kind of smiled and I said, "Well, from where I'm at, there isn't a photograph or a visual story to be told. So I love just taking in the moment." And this person just kind of looked at me and said, "Oh, so you truly are a photographer." You folks have a marvelous week. Get out there and shoot. Oh, fireworks are coming up. I forgot, she looked at my own notes. A couple of people are asking about photographing fireworks. Well, the MyOps, which I use for photographing lightning, is a great tool for photographing lightning. There's a number of things on the web how to do that. So have a great 4th. Enjoy those fireworks. And remember to make every click your story.